Hi, everybody. I'm here with Ben Abear, and we're talking about recruiter enablement. Ben, give us a quick introduction to you to start with.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Ben. I live in here, Austin, Texas, and I've been in the recruiting space now for about a decade. And I lead the recruiting operations team at Google Fiber, and I've been here for the last almost 3 years and have helped build the recruiting function from the ground up.
Amazing. So, Google Fiber recruitment operations. What is recruitment? First of all, before we go into enablement, what does recruitment operations include in your area of responsibility?
Yeah, so for me, recruiting operations, pretty much everything that you don't see as part of the recruiting process, including the design of the process itself. So I'm responsible for vendor management, the selection of tools and systems, system configurations, all of the analytics and reporting that goes on in the organization, candidate experience, hiring team experience, uh, legal and compliance, policies and procedures, documentation, training and development, basically everything that a recruiter does or is part of that you don't see behind the scenes.
Okay, so is recruiter enablement a theme within all of this, or is it distinctive in terms of like programs or initiatives or whatever?
Uh, it's thematic. And so I think when I started in recruiting operations, it feels very policy and procedure, build SOPs, go design systems, do the nuts and bolts. As I've been in this role longer now, it has turned into more of the enablement pieces. So it's not just put the process in place. It's, well, how do we help people really bring to life the superpower that recruiting teams have, which is the human connection. And so by removing some of the admin stuff and making that more invisible and bringing forward the basically the art of how to close a candidate, how to attract a candidate, how to talk to people, how to move people through the process, and that enablement piece is becoming more and more prevalent, especially as tools are getting more and more intelligent about doing some of the other aspects of the work.
So, do you think that? So, I've got quite a few people that I've met this year who have gone into dedicated enablement jobs in companies that have not had that type of job before. I've asked them like 3 months in, so tell me, what are you doing? And what they're doing sounds more like rec ops to me. And when I say that to them, they go, that's because I've got to do all this background work before I actually get into the enablement. So, is that what's happened with you? Is that an evolution that's natural?
Yeah, that's exactly right. You have to build the process to be able to show people how to bring it to life. So if you don't have if you don't have a consistent and scalable way for the team to do things, enablement becomes almost an impossible task. How do you train 5, 10, 20 people on how to do something well if they're doing it 5, 10, 20 different ways? And
Mm.
so you've got to really sit down with teams and start from, what does good look like? What does our process look like? What are the KPIs that we're going to hold ourselves accountable to? And then you can start bringing to life and building the enablement pieces and going and finding the components of what the team needs to meet those success markers.
Okay, so for enablement, what does good look like? Like, what are the objectives? What are the wins?
Yeah. So you start with your KPIs for your processes, and then for me, what we've done is we've built out an annual calendar of how we're going to and what we're going to train the team on. And when I say that, we actually build out thematic quarters. So for a quarter, we'll focus on experience and we'll have 2 or 3 trainings, whether they're internal or we bring in somebody externally to talk to us about what makes a good candidate experience. And we use data from our own organization to say, this is where we are, broken out by segments. this is where we want to get to by the end of this quarter, and here are the different things that we're bringing in, the different trainings that we're bringing in, and then that becomes part of our process. And so by the end of that period, that's built in, and it's just part of how we continue to talk about what we do next. And so we try to have everything build on top of one another.
So from a recruiter's perspective, what are we trying to enable them to do? To do things with more quality, to get through more productivity faster, to make them happier, to improve their engagement with candidates? Like what are the things we can, yeah.
Yeah, great question. So some of the things that I think about in terms of what do we want people to be really good at? One of the ones that we focused on is how do we source really well and how do we build relationships for the long term?
Yeah.
So it's not just this transaction of I have inbound applications and I just got to churn through a bunch of people. It's how do I go out and build a large network and talk to people and meet people where they are? And the skills of being able to do that at scale, not just one person for this to turn into a hire, but thinking about the 1, 2, 3 year journey that that person is on and the organization is on to be able to match the timing appropriately. So for us, we've thought a lot about how do we do that well? What does that look like? It's using tools, right? Like there's lots of great tools out there to be able to do that, but it's really the people piece that is the most important. And it's that those interpersonal skills that we focus on developing and measuring the ROI of what that looks like in not just a short, very fixed term in terms of when there's a need, but the longer term of how that builds and turns into a really great employer brand.
So yes, I'm glad you mentioned employer brand because I was going to say that recruitment marketing, recruiters need to be marketers. They need to be relationship builders. They've always had to be that, but I think they need to be marketers as well, more than ever. And so, like, how do you interact with recruitment marketing, or is that within the RecOps area, or is that an adjacent partner area, and how does that interface?
Yeah, so for us, it's integrated in a lot of places. The marketing teams own some part of that or drive a lot of that, and the folks in my space are consulted on how to do that well, where to be, where are the right audiences, all those kinds of things. So I think both exist. For us, it's not just the recruiters that we're talking and thinking about of how to enable. It's the rest of the organization.
Yeah.
So we think about it from how do we enlist not just the hiring managers, but the interviewers, the leadership teams, and the spaces that we need and want them to be in at the right moments throughout the entire year when we know we have different hiring initiatives, right? So there are things that we try to make sure that we talk about and do and make it a team sport in terms of how the marketing is done and try to put those. I think one of the things that I think about a lot, Adam, is like how do we bring the employment marketing piece together with the company marketing piece, and can you do both of those things really well, and how much overlap can you create so the employer brand and the company brand become synonymous with one another?
I'm sorry, I'll tell you exactly what happened there. My wife phoned me. And I'll cut this bit out. Right, okay, I'll cut this bit out, or I might leave just one little bit of it in because it's funny. Right, okay. The last question I want to ask you, Ben, is like,
Yeah.
what are the sort of things that you've seen done? I mean, you've worked in other organizations as well. Like,
Yeah.
what are the things you've seen maybe done badly, or from people that you know? Like, what are some of the enablement type things that maybe don't do it that way? You mentioned, for example, if there's 20 recruiters and they're all doing things in completely different ways, that's quite a challenge.
It is quite a challenge. Something that I've seen not done really well, and I've talked about this a lot, is having recruiting ops folks that bring tools in to be the process. So
Right. Yeah.
recruiters say there's a problem, or leaders say this is a problem, and the tool becomes the solution to
Yeah.
that particular problem, rather than stopping and taking the time to really understand, is this really going to solve this problem? Is a tool the problem, or what's the process that we want? What are the outcomes that we're looking for? Designing a process, and then if there is a tool that can help make that a little bit easier and reduce that friction, great, do that. But I think that's the number one thing that I see most often, is that a lot of teams rely on tools to become their process, rather than really thinking through what the process actually should look like, and go to find tools that support how they implement those processes.
Got it. I agree. I think that's putting the cart before the horse. Yeah, absolutely. Ben, thank you so much for your time. It's been really great to talk to you today and to find out more. And I've very much appreciated learning from you. So thank you and all the best.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me, Adam.